The order came at 0300. Evacuate. Now. Leave everything you can't carry. Every nurse grabbed her kit. Every doctor grabbed his bag. Trucks idled in the mud outside the tent flaps, engines coughing in the thick Philippine jungle air. The Japanese were 12 miles out, maybe less. Nobody was counting anymore. And then there was Second Lieutenant Hana Merritt, U.S. Army Nurse Corps, standing perfectly still in the center of Ward 3. 22 men lay on cots around her, chest wounds, shattered legs. One boy, couldn't have been 19, had a fever so high his lips had turned the color of ash. She looked at the trucks, she looked at her patients. She set her kit down. "Go," she told the others. "I'll be on the next convoy." There was no next convoy. It was January 1942. The fall of the Philippines was not a question, it was a countdown. General MacArthur had already ordered the retreat to Bataan, a peninsula of jungle, disease, and dwindling hope. American and Filipino forces were being squeezed from every direction. Supply lines had been cut. Food was running out. Medicine was nearly gone. The field hospital at Cabanatuan had been operating for 3 weeks on almost nothing. Sofa powder rationed like gold dust. Morphine measured in drops. Surgeries performed by flashlight when the generator failed. Hana Merritt had been awake for 31 hours when the evacuation order came. She was 26 years old, from Dayton, Ohio. She had volunteered the week after Pearl Harbor. She had never expected this. The trucks left. The jungle swallowed their sound within minutes. Hana moved through the ward with the calm of someone who had already made her peace. She checked pulses. She changed dressings. She spoke quietly to the men who were awake and to some who weren't. "You're going to be fine," she told Private Delgado, whose leg wound had gone septic. She didn't know if that was true. She said it anyway. By dawn, the men who could speak began to understand what had happened. "Lieutenant, where is everyone?" She didn't lie. She didn't panic. She simply said, "I'm here. That's enough for right now." It wasn't bravery in the Hollywood sense. No dramatic speech, no raised fist. It was something quieter and far more terrifying. A woman choosing, in full knowledge of the consequences, to stay. The next convoy never came because the road had been cut. Japanese forces had moved faster than intelligence predicted. They almost always did in those early months of the Pacific War. The route back to Bataan was compromised. Any truck that tried to run it would have been ambushed before the first mile. Hana didn't know this yet, but she suspected. She rationed what little morphine remained. She boiled water over a fire she built herself. She performed a wound debridement on Corporal Reyes using a scalpel, a prayer, and a flashlight held between her teeth. He survived. They all survived. For 11 days, Hana Merritt ran that ward alone. She slept in 40-minute intervals on a cot near the door, close enough to hear if anyone's breathing changed. She ate whatever the men couldn't finish, which wasn't much. She sent 2 soldiers who had recovered enough to walk to a supply run to a nearby barrio, where Filipino civilians, at enormous personal risk, brought rice, coconut oil, and clean cloth. On the 8th day, a Filipino resistance runner reached her with a message. "Hold, rescue coming." She read it twice, folded it, put it in her pocket. Then she went back to work. On January 19, 1942, a small American patrol broke through the jungle and found the hospital still standing. The officer in charge, a captain from Missouri, later wrote in his report, "We expected to find a field hospital abandoned. Instead, we found 22 men alive, wounds dressed, morale intact. One nurse. She She was changing a bandage when we arrived. She didn't even look up. Hana Merritt was evacuated with her patients. She continued serving as a nurse on Bataan until the fall in April 1942, when she was captured and held as a prisoner of war at Santo Tomas internment camp for nearly 3 years. She was liberated in February 1945. She returned to Dayton. She never spoke publicly about those 11 days. The Army awarded her the Legion of Merit. The citation was 3 sentences long. History remembers the generals who ordered the retreats. It rarely remembers the nurse who refused one. But 22 men went home because she stayed. 22 families kept their fathers, their sons, their brothers, because one woman from Dayton, Ohio, set down her kit in the dark and decided that leaving was the one thing she simply could not do. She didn't think she was a hero. She thought she was a nurse. And that is the untold spirit.